meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Will the Secretary call the roll?
Yes, it's my understanding, after discussion with Karen, excuse me, we'll need two roll call votes. The first motion we'll need, you can ask for a motion on, is a quorum of who's actually here today, right now. So that would be the first motion. So we need that moved and seconded.
Yeah, and
Correct, Karen, or?
No, you just have to establish that you have a quorum of the committee, and then you would ask for a motion to allow Director Irvine to participate by phone.
Okay, so we have a quorum of the committee present, so then, Chairman, we need a motion to accept,
To allow Director Irvine to participate by telephone.
to allow Director Irvine to participate by telephone. Thank you.
Okay,
That's the
move
motion we need.
move it.
I second it.
Take the vote then. Mr. Youngblood,
Yes.
Dr. Sen,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales,
Yes.
Director Irvine,
Yes.
and Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Our first order of business today is the approval of the committee minutes of July 15, 2015. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion on the
Will the
minutes.
Secretary call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Youngblood,
Yes.
Dr. Sen,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales,
Yes.
Ms. Irvine,
Yes.
and Chairman Silva.
Yes.
The motion to approve the minutes is approved with 6 yes votes.
Our next order of business is the review of the finance report. Ron and Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Denard, CFO for the CTA. We will review the financials for the month of June. Fair and pass revenue was relatively flat to budget, above last year. Reduced fare was unfavorable to budget. Non-fare box is relatively flat to budget. And total revenue for the month was down roughly 1.2 million. And you can see that our free rides are continuing to be less than last year, and that's due to the good work of our internal audit, the security area, and Tom's group. Year-to-date revenue is down by fare and pass is down by 2.9 million, and that's primarily due to that cold February, the winter months that we had. Reduced fare is down 8.1 million. Non-fare box is up 2.9 million, and that's primarily the non-capital grants that we receive. So total revenue is down 8.1 million a year to date. Our average fare is up slightly by 1 penny, and our free rides, again, you can see are above, are less than last year. On the expense side for the month, labor is relatively flat to budget for the month. Materials is down, is unfavorable, and that's primarily due, one, as I said, we sort of budget conservative. We also have some one-time expenses that should be capitalized that we need to pull out of that number. Also, again, when we do rehabs and we open up the buses, we actually look at if we find other things that are wrong, we'll go ahead and fix that also. We're looking at our budgeting process, and it's starting now, so we think that we'll have a much better budget for 2016, and right now I would project that we'll continue to see some unfavorability in materials through the balance of the year.
What do you mean by much better budget?
Well, we'll look at sort of a baseline budget, and then as we have we'll layer in the impact of programs that we have, such as rehabs or getting new buses. So we'll do a much better, more in-depth budgeting than in the past. We more looked at just historically what we did before. and we have a closer relationship with the maintenance and the infrastructure department. Fuel is year-to-date, is favorable for the month. Power is flat. Security is flat. Other expenses is favorable. That's primarily timing. So for the month, expenses were about close to flat to budget, $400,000 unfavorable. Year-to-date, labor is $8.7 million favorable. That's due to our sort of position management and our fringe process. So we've been doing a much better job with fringe and medical, and we budgeted conservative, so we're doing better than what we budgeted. Materials, you can see the impact of the winter. Fuel, we continue to be favorable. Power, we're favorable. Purchasing is flat, and other expenses is unfavorable, and that's the other impact of those non-capital grants. So we see the revenue on one side, and then we see the expense on the other side. So total operating expenses are about $5.3 million favorable. Our revenue was $8.1 million unfavorable. So on $700 million, we're roughly $3 million unfavorable. So we're slightly unfavorable, nothing to worry about. We think that our finances are in order.
Any questions?
No, I was just, in fact, Ron, I was happy to hear you say that because I was going to speak to the point that we've got 4 months to go in this fiscal year, and despite the challenges that we face, or uncertainty, I should say, that we face in Springfield, you're still comfortable that we're going to end the year with a balanced budget?
Absolutely.
Early in the year, we took the decision of not hedging the power, not hedging the oil. And hindsight, okay, do you think that we made a good decision, okay, because I see, okay, that the oil, okay, went to record lows yesterday?
Yes, we absolutely made the right decision because when we hedged up to 14 months in advance. So you would have been locked, as prices fell, you would have been locking in against the counterparty while prices were higher. Then they would have fallen, and then you would have had to pay the counterparty. We were able to wait and get lock in a really good price for 2015, and we're planning to do the same for 2016. As the market continues to drop, we're looking at the futures market, and then what we will do is actually go to a vendor and say, give me a fixed price for all of 2016 while prices are dropping, and lock in that price this year. So then it won't matter what happens next year, we'll have budget certainty.
Good. Any questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you talk with a vendor, you won't accept where the prices are. You will say best price, kind of projecting out. Do you still
Yes.
expect prices to drop even further, right?
Yes, Ed. And I mean, it's sort of a negotiation with the vendor, because what you're really doing is pushing the hedging onto them. So you get your market intelligence, because we do have an energy advisor, and then we'll push the vendor to get the best price.
Any other questions? There are no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance establishing certain rates of fares for the first day of school in 2015 and 2016. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, directors.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Michael Gwynn, Director of Revenue and Fare Systems, and presented for your consideration is an ordinance establishing free fares for students and an accompanying adult on the first day of school for Chicago Public Schools' first day of school for the next 2 years. This year, the first day of school for CPS is September 8th. This is the 5th year that CTA has provided this opportunity in this program. CTA plays a very important role in education. In fact, many students rely on CTA and public transportation to get to and from school every day. Annually, CTA provides over 28 million student rides. The first day of school is one of the most important days of the school year. Recognizing that, in 2011, Mayor Emanuel and CTA initiated the First Day Free Rides program in order to encourage attendance on the first day and start the academic year off on the right foot. Since that first year of the program, CPS attendance has risen every year. And while there are clearly many reasons for that, CTA is proud to help contribute and to continue to contribute to this encouraging trend through offering free rides on the first day of school. Free rides will be provided from 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. For students and, as I said, one accompanying adult. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Can you say, okay, that you're gonna be looking, okay, for sponsor for that day? How are we doing right now?
We're in productive discussions. We haven't finalized the sponsorship agreement yet, but we're going to continue to work and pursue it right up until
And the agreement is for the whole $140,000, which is our cost, right?
yeah, that's our estimated cost based on ridership, historical ridership, and we'll be pursuing sponsorship for as much of that as we can get.
How do you control, okay, how many people really doesn't pay, okay, that should be paying?
Our CAs and our bus operators will be taking count and keeping track. You know, there's a little bit of science and art in that because you know, the young child that looks like school age, there's going to be a little bit of judgment, but they're keeping track of it, and we've got the procedures established over 5 years, so they know it's coming.
So you're comfortable?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Mike, who was the prior sponsor?
We've had Sun Times for the last 3 years, and they decided not to extend that sponsorship for this
Do we
year.
work with CPS, or pretty much we go on it on our own in terms of looking for sponsorship?
We have been working with Titan, our advertising agency, to help drum up interest. CPS is aware that we're looking. We're happy to take any kind of help we can get to help. You know,
But we've
find
got some
somebody.
prospects?
We've got some
Okay.
people, yeah.
Okay.
Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mike. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a lease of retail concession space located at 188 North State Street, Chicago, Illinois. Carol Murray, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Carol Morey, your Chief Planning Officer, and I have with me Joe Harmoning, our General Manager of Real Estate. The first item would be a third lease to the Baglers, who will operate the space as a coffee and pastry shop. Last month, the board awarded leases at Jefferson Park Blue and Jackson Red to the Baglers. This lease is for a space in the Lake Red Line Station. The lease is for 2 years with 2 5-year options and has a 3% escalation rate. The space is 120 square feet, and the rent is $135 per square foot, or about $16,200 in the first year. The CTA received only one bid for this space. However, the rent is slightly above the JLL minimum recommended range of $110 to $120 per square foot. The net present value of the initial 10-year term of the Baglers lease is $157,281.55. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Oh, no questions. I was just a little bit surprised that we only had one bidder. I mean, you would think 188 North State would be a pretty desirable location.
It's kind of tucked into the back of the mezzanine.
Yeah.
So we weren't surprised. We're hoping that the Baglers are successful in that location.
Okay.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing a lease of the first and second floor space located at 120 North Racine Avenue, Chicago. Carol?
This ordinance would authorize a lease of the first and second floors of a 3-story office building owned by CTA at 120 North Racine, which houses the control center. The first 2 floors of the building were occupied by the City of Chicago Department of Buildings, who vacated the property at the beginning of August. CTA has worked with Jones Lang LaSalle to secure a new tenant for the building. They have actively marketed the property on a national basis and helped CTA to secure a new tenant, Sterling Bay Racine. Sterling Bay Racine's parent company is an established owner and operator of commercial real estate in the Chicago area with several properties, including the new regional offices of Google at 1000 West Fulton. The lease is for 10 years with 2 5-year options and also includes a right of first refusal to lease the 3rd floor, currently occupied by the control center, should the CTA decide to lease it, and a right of first refusal to buy the building should CTA decide to sell it. The lease to Sterling Racine also includes 100 parking spaces formerly utilized by the Department of Buildings. The initial base rent is $12.97 per square foot with an annual escalation of 3% per year. Sterling Bay Racine will be responsible for any build-out expenses and for a proportionate share of building operating expenses and utilities, as well as leasehold taxes. Gross rents are anticipated to be $23.47 per square foot, assuming building operating expenses of $10.50 per square foot, which is our current cost. Gross asking lease rates for space in the Fulton West Loop submarket average $21.74 per square foot. So we're actually getting a little bit above the average. No tenant improvement dollars are included, although Sterling Racine will receive a 6-month rent abatement under the lease. We anticipate that Sterling Racine will improve the 1st and 2nd floor and sublet the property. Any sublease of the property will require the prior approval of the Chicago Transit Board. The net present value of the lease is $10,153,753 over the initial 10-year term. Second year gross rent is just over $2 million, which is 70% more than the gross rent paid by the city. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Well, I have fond memories of that building as much our president must too. The rate you say is, is higher than other buildings in that area, but does that include parking? Because parking in that area isn't cheap.
Yes, it does. It does. So the $21.74 would be an average rate for a building which included parking.
With parking?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any employees of CTA in that building right now?
Yes, the control center employees operate out of that building.
Are they moving here?
No, we're still going to occupy the 3rd floor. We're leasing just the 1st and 2nd, which was formerly occupied by the Department of Buildings. And there's additional parking. So the parking that Sterling Racine will get is actually across the street from the building. There's a parking lot right next to the building that the CTA will continue to utilize for its employees and for people who are visiting the control center. And then there's an additional few spaces across the street that CTA will retain as well.
So were there some CTA employees in the 1st and 2nd floor?
No, it was all the city.
It was all
Yeah. It
so
was the
now
city
you
depart-
can put everybody in the 3rd floor.
Right, so the CTA employees will remain on the 3rd floor where they have been, and then Sterling Racine will move into the 1st and 2nd floors, which are now vacant. The city moved out at the beginning of August.
There was a time before we moved into this building where we occupied the 1st and 2nd floors of that building with our own construction engineering group. Once we moved into this building, we were able to consolidate everybody here, which freed up the space to allow us to initially lease it to the city. So that's why those 2 floors are available now that were used by us, when we first built the building.
Good. Any other questions? In the first right of refusal that you give to them in case you sell the building, you didn't negotiate price at that, right?
No, it'd be based on the appraised value at that time.
Is that part of the agreement?
It's part of the agreement. So the CTA has the right to go out and get 2 appraisals, and it would be the average of those 2 appraisals would be the price. But CTA
So
does.
that's the way that you're going to determine the price that you sell.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
But, I would add, we don't have any current plans to relocate the control center.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing acceptance of a bonus contribution pursuant to the City of Chicago zoning ordinance Brown line.
This ordinance would allow CTA to enter into an escrow agreement with Wells and Erie LLC to allow CTA to accept an infrastructure bonus under the Chicago zoning code. Wells and Erie LLC is seeking approval from the city for a planned development for the property located at 2012 West Ontario, 628 to 648 North Wells, and 201 to 209 West Erie. They want to include a floor area bonus in exchange for a contribution to the CTA of approximately $1.3 million to be used for capital improvements. The capital improvements will include some combination of track work, painting, and lead abatement of the CTA structure in the area north of the Merchandise Mart and south of Superior. Acceptance of this bonus benefits the CTA by increasing the amount of funding for CTA's state of good repair needs. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
So Carol, just one question. So this would actually have to get city approval first, right?
Yes.
So this, what we're passing today would only allow us to accept the bonus money.
Exactly.
And the bonus is, why? Are we acting as lobbyists with the city, or what are we?
So as part of the zoning code, they allow for floor area ratio bonuses for contributions to city infrastructure. So there's a provision for parks, there's a provision for schools, there's a provision for CTA. And so in this case, they're proposing a contribution to the CTA.
How long, how long
ahead.
have transit been able to get a piece of the bonus money?
It's actually been in place for some time, but the zoning ordinance was amended at the end of last year to expand the geographic limits and the types of properties qualifying. So we're seeing more interest from the development community because more properties qualify for the bonus.
So we've got this kind of bonus before, bonus money before?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, that's good to see. The number is pretty big, so.
Yeah, we're excited about the opportunity.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the ordinance for approval?
So move.
Second.
Our next order of business is the review on ordinance authorizing the sale of authority development rights at 152 West Illinois Street, Chicago. Karen?
This ordinance would allow the transfer of development rights associated with our substation located at 152 West Illinois to 430 North LaSalle LLC. The property is currently improved with a one-story substation, which is an active and operating part of the CTA system, providing traction power to the Brown line. The current zoning of the property allows for additional improvements of about 72,000 square feet. These development rights were valued by appraisal at $3.87 million and were offered by invitation for bid. The CTA received one bid in the amount of $4,004,000 from 430 North LaSalle LLC, including an estimate of 70,804 square feet of development rights. The final number of development rights on a square footage basis will be established by the Zoning Commission for the planned development. The invitation for bid was structured so the purchaser pays $56.55 per square foot for each square foot of development rights approved for transfer as part of the planned development. So the $4 million will be adjusted based on the final approved amount of square footage. In this arrangement, the CTA becomes part of the planned development, but no real estate interests are transferred. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, please.
So this is sort of like air rights, except that the rights are over a parking lot as well. Am I correct?
Well, in this arrangement, the planned development will include the CTA building. So the development rights for the CTA building can actually be used for a property across the street, which is also part of the planned development.
But if it is something like air rights, has this been, is this the first time CTA is doing this?
Yes.
Is it, how, has it been done very often at the public sector building, do we know?
We've seen it done in the private sector before.
No, public sector, I meant.
Not that I'm aware of.
It's been.
No. Joe Harmoning from General Manager of Real Estate. We haven't seen it in the public sector anywhere else.
So it's pretty innovative, right?
Yes. It's the first time, yes.
And we're still keeping the property, correct? The property is still,
Absolutely. There's no real estate interest for being transferred, no easements. It's strictly a transfer of the development rights.
And the price per square foot will stay the same. The total amount will change, but could change, but the price will stay the same.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So move.
I'll second.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an agreement with City Year. Maria Teresa.
Good morning, directors. Maria Teresa Romano with the Government and Community Relations Liaison. Coming before you for approval of a new city year agreement. A city year agreement that would allow us to continue to have a partnership with City Year, 190 young adults, ages 17 to 24, who will serve as not only ambassadors, but provide assistance to at least 5 to 10 CTA departments in an average of 15 projects throughout the year. The cost of the agreement will be about $190,000. In return, we will gain City Year volunteers to do work for us in an average of 8,300 hours. I will be gladly answer any questions you may have.
How many years have we been doing this?
In October, it will be 17 years.
17 years?
Correct.
And why do we bring it to the board every year? Is that
This agreement will be seeking a 2-year approval.
2 years approval?
Correct.
And we have 17, so in 2 years you come back, okay, and then we approve again the same.
Unless you prefer that we come every 10 years, yes.
No, I just, we can probably do it longer. Any questions? No, if there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the ordinance for approval?
so move.
I'll second.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Maria Teresa. Our final order of business today is the review of 5 purchase and sales award recommendations. Helen McCormick.
Morning.
Morning. And we will start with contract numbers A1 to A3. Any questions?
Yeah, I've just got a question. So this is not something that Napa would do in terms of just tires for our vehicles? This wouldn't be part of their inventory for us?
Because we're leasing them and not buying them outright, no, we
Okay.
lease directly with the company.
So you lease the tires and you keep them for how long, and then you turn them back over?
They last approximately 60,000 miles, and
Okay.
they keep coming. Part of what they do is they service the tires for us as well. So
Okay.
they'll come in and check, you're going to have your issues with the tire, could be in an accident or whatever. They would come in and replace those tires, and they make sure that they're servicing them as well. And then additionally, they get rid of the tires for us. If we
Do they
did it,
recycle, or they
they-
bring recycle?
I believe they recycle them. But otherwise, we would have to pay to do that.
How many bidders did we have for this?
We had a pre-bid meeting on this initially, and we had the 3 major companies that provide bus tires. One of them couldn't provide the spec that we needed for this particular bus. We had 2 bidders then, and one of them submitted the bid 5 hours after the bid opening. So we did just have the 1 bid. It is a contractor we've worked with before. They've done a very good job for us, and they're almost 7% lower. And my staff asked them how they could come in at 7% lower, and they said because it was a competitive procurement, they really wanted to win the bid. And the lower, there was a lower raw material index now than in 2010, so they were able to do that and cut their profit a little bit because they really wanted to keep the bid. Because as far as they knew, there were 2 other bidders on the project.
So you're comfortable to the way it went?
I am.
Thank you.
This is the first time we've ever leased?
No,
Okay.
we've leased in the past. This is just a new procurement. The last one, it will end September 29th, and it was also with Goodyear. So we've been leasing. We find it's a much better deal for us financially, as well as all the other services. If we bought them outright, we'd be responsible for maintaining the service on the wheels and for disposing of them. And you can't just throw them into a landfill.
And DBE, okay, I mean, in this type of companies, we cannot do it?
No.
Sorry, Mary Person, Director of Diversity. This procurement is for leasing of tires, so there are no subcontract opportunities for this.
Any questions? So let's move to F1. Any questions?
I just want to go back to A3. I've got a question about the purchasing of the buses. How do the buses get here? Because I'm looking at the DBE participation. Are the materials, the buses, how are they delivered to us?
So with the purchase of buses, they have a TVM, what's a transit manufacturer. So they actually don't have DB participation. The manufacturer has their own TVM that the FTA approves.
Okay.
Yeah, the entire DBE program, including their goal, is reviewed and approved by the federal government every year. And so CTA has no involvement in the DBE goal or has any ability to modify it because it's all run by the feds. And that's primarily because these companies tend to do business all over the country. And in order to basically support their ability to set up a program that would make sense, the federal government decided over a decade ago that they would basically establish a national program for them that allows them to basically meet the requirements nationally.
Versus them having it for every
Right.
city they do business.
Right.
There's a Buy American clause in there, right?
Yes.
But isn't Nova a Canadian company, or at least Canadian-owned?
They still have to do certain portions here. They still have to build it here and buy the steel or whatever the requirements of Buy America are. They have to follow those.
They have to do final assembly in the United States, and they still have to provide.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
They have to do final assembly in the United States, and they
I
still
see.
have to provide a certain percentage of their components from American-made products. So that's what the federal requirement calls for.
In the future, are we going to be requiring sort of job contribution to job creation, something like that in contracts?
We put in a provision in our Series 7000 that's asking about job creation.
Any questions on F1?
No, it's not a question, more of a statement to just, Mary, make sure that as these companies are giving task orders, that we monitor their DBE and in some kind of form that it's reported back to the board in some type of form.
Yes, each task order will be reviewed for DB for scope of work and evaluated just as we do any other contract, and we will prepare a report for you.
Helen, can you explain us the process you went through, okay, for the F1?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we issued an RFP requesting consulting services for 7 different categories. Those include organization and management consulting, internal audit, financial consulting, data analytics, risk management consulting, supply chain and inventory management, and information technology. And what we did is we asked them to provide us with how their ability to provide the services for each of the categories that they feel that they're qualified to provide services in. We asked for their firm and key personnel experience, and we asked for their billing rates. We then had 3 evaluators who will be using this task order, and this task order-based contract, and they evaluated them. At that point, we reviewed the evaluations, the scoring, and we selected those that we were deemed qualified to participate. Though out of 48 firms that submitted proposals, 38 of them were deemed qualified, and out of those 38, we were able to reach contract agreement with 34. Of those 34, 14 are DBEs. What will happen going forward is a department who has a need for a consultant will come to the purchasing department with a scope, an independent cost estimate, and the duration that they estimate this project will last. We will submit that to DBE. They will then add any goal that they can add to the task order. That will then be sent out to those firms that were qualified for that particular category. It will be sent out by email. They'll have a week to 2 weeks to respond depending on the complexity of the project. The proposals will then be ranked according to the approach that they feel that they can do, the resumes of the personnel they'll put on it, and then the fees that they'll charge us. They'll then be ranked by the project manager, the project manager's general manager, and then someone else who has information, who knows the consulting that work that needs to be done. They will then rank them in order 1 through 4, or however many are submitted. That will come to purchasing. We will then negotiate with the top vendor, and by negotiate, I mean, we'll just make sure that they understand what we meant by that scope, and they're willing to provide that work to us for that fee. We will then issue a task order to them. They will sign and we will sign. If it needs to come to the board, anything over $250,000 will come to the board. We expect that will take about 2 months for the process. If it's under that amount and it does not need to come to the board, we expect to be able to award these in about a month. That is opposed to a 6-month process for a regular RFP. We do have a wide variety of firms in here, so we feel that, we've been very, we hope that it'll give opportunities for some of the lesser-known firms.
Any questions?
This is the first time then it's been done for service
Yes.
contracts?
Absolutely.
Congratulations, you've got a large
Good job.
pool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good.
Our next, finally, we will review contract G1. Any questions? Is he a sole supplier, G1?
It's a disadvantageous contract, and it's based, which means that if we went out for bid, it could potentially cost the agency more money. It would be more difficult to supply this good. So they're not a sole source. Some of the reasons for that is there are other competitive local exchange carriers called CLECs. AT&T is known as an incumbent local exchange carrier. And as I understand it from IT, and they may better be able to explain this, but they are one of the only companies that can provide the service to all of our locations. We have them at bus stops and train shelters and out at the various stock rooms and storerooms and so forth. So we understand that to switch to another carrier would be cost prohibitive to us.
Any questions? Since there are no further questions to come before this committee, no, wait, I have to put in the omnibus, no?
We need a motion and a second just to leave, to put the
If there are no further
contracts on the
questions, may I
omnibus.
have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval
So moved.
I'll second.
Right, those are the contracts.
for the contracts?
Yeah.
Since there is no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to recommend approval of the omnibus?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Will the secretary call the roll,
Yes,
please?
a roll call vote on the omnibus. Excuse me. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
And Chairman Silva?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Give me Would everybody please be seated and please silence your cell phones? You ready, Steve? You ready, Kevin? Kevin, you're still there, right? Still here. Okay, all right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the August 12th meeting of Chicago Transit Board. We have 5 members of the board present, which is a quorum of the board, but I'd like to entertain a motion to allow Director Irvine to join the proceedings via phone.
So
Do I?
moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion to approve Mr. Irvine in the meeting is approved with 5 yes votes. And I also ask all the speakers and the board members to please talk directly into your microphone so that Director Irvine can hear you a little bit better this time around, okay? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg. The first order of business today is public comment.
Yes, we have 3 public comment speakers. Just to remind all the speakers, so please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And the first speaker will be Mr. Benjamin Huey, who's already taken a seat. Please start, Mr. Huey.
Okay, thank you. Dear sirs and madams and Mr. President, my name is Benjamin Huey. I'm a representative of Bridgeport Alliance, a member of 31st Street and Lincoln Avenue Crossturn Bus Coalition. The people of 31st and Lincoln Avenue are asking that you please restore our buses so we can get around like we used to. We hope with the grace of Jesus, you will give it back to us. In Matthew 25, Jesus says, whatever you haven't done for the least of these, you haven't done for me. When you are denying one of us a bus, you are denying Jesus a bus. People like me and my neighbor need these buses to places like church, grocery stores, senior suites, Mercy Hospital, and the food pantries. I volunteer to help feed the least of these. Don't let the devil block your vision. Please open your eyes. See what these routes can do for me, my neighbors, and this city. I don't know how much you make. I rely on a very small amount of money each month. I have a fixed income like most of our seniors. I have a bus pass, but I currently have to walk 20 minutes to get to a bus. I have a bad hip, a bad knee, and arthritis, and I sometimes can't get where I want to go because I can't make the walk that day. I can't afford a cab or some of the other luxuries those who are rich can't afford. With Governor Rauner's recent cuts, I really can't even afford the $3 for a pace car. It's not fair that those of us in need keep getting cut. We are already suffering without the buses. Things are even worse. Don't make it worse, make it better. We need you to make the right decision, to make transit fair, and to help us who are in need. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huey. Our next speaker will be, Mr. Huey, would you like to stay at that table or step back before? Why don't you just stay there, Mr. Huey, that's fine. Our next speaker will be Ms. Lisa Martin. Would you like to step forward to the table and please address the board directly into the microphone? Thank you.
I have some handouts for the board.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lisa Martin. I'm the director of Very Active Senior Center,
longtime resident of the North Side and a member of the number 3111 Bus Coalition, speaking today solely on the widespread and devastating effect the discontinuation of the heart of the number 11 Avenue bus route from Leland to Fullerton has and continues to have daily in our diverse community of students, young adults, parents, disabled of all ages, and the seniors. Due to time restrictions, I share only a few updates of the thousands that we have with you within the last 2.5 years since I spoke at the budget meeting. Number one is Elizabeth and family. She's in her mid-30s, married with young children. In 2012, they lived at the 1900 block of West Grace. They were steps from home to the Lincoln Avenue bus to take north to the Sulzer Library or to Wells Park, and it only was steps after they got off the bus. After the decision to discontinue, they had to walk to Damon and Damon Avenue bus to Montrose and then to the library. If you go on to the website, it says that there's not very much walking involved. However, there's a few discrepancies, and now they would have to walk 5.5 blocks. The current status of them is that they moved because of better transportation elsewhere. Our second person is Martha. In 2012, she was married. She's in her 70s. And here's a picture of where she lives. Right here in the corner on the right-hand side is Eastwood. It's a small street. She used to be able to just walk maybe about 25 feet to the Lincoln Avenue bus, pick it up, and it would drop her off right in front of Jewel. Now, as you can see by the picture, she's right there by Western Avenue where this is the brown line, and this is where the number 11 bus still is in effect, but goes north and not south between Leland and Fullerton. She can now go, if she would like to get to her Jewel, walk 1/2 block to Western, and then take the Western Avenue bus to Cullum and walk 6 blocks to Jewel. The problem is she has problems with mobility. Her current status is that her husband has died. She has an only daughter who does not live with her. Neither she nor the daughter drive. The daughter lives elsewhere with her husband. Martha now relies on her son-in-law to drive her shopping. Therefore, Martha now is isolated, not self-sufficient, has lost all of her independence, and is depressed since she has nowhere to go. I have 2 bullet points. In the booster paper, immediately after November 2012 meeting, a CTA spokesman questions whether some of the speakers hadn't exaggerated the distances some people would have to walk, and that along that route, alternate transit is within 2 blocks, and that's why that segment was picked, because it was offered other choices. The directions that I just quoted are directly from the current CTA travel planner site. In both of these instances, and thousands more, there are other inconsistencies in the travel planner as to walking distance. This week's Tribune discussed Mayor's plan would help residents live and shop near transit. I ask, how much closer does Martha need to live? She can see the number 11 bus from the back window, and yet she cannot use our beloved number 11 bus because it no longer goes where she needs it to.
Ms. Martin, we need to wrap up fairly shortly. Thank you.
I am.
Okay.
The number 11 bus will always be our lifeline. As you see, our number 31 and 11 Bus Coalition thanks you in advance for bringing our buses back. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Mr. Huey and Ms. Martin, if you would like to then leave the table, then we'll bring up our third speaker. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. Ms. Kerson, would you like to step to the front table, please? and speak directly into the microphone? Thank you. Just wait 1 second, Ms. Gerson, so everybody, so we move out. Okay, Ms. Gerson, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Amy Curson from the law firm Reyes Curson on behalf of our client Verizon Wireless. Today, the CTA board is being asked to approve a $19.6 million no-bid contract with AT&T for landline services. We respectfully request that the board delay approval of this contract until it is ordered and receive the results of an independent investigation of the relationship between that contract and the CTA's decision to move all of its wireless business over to AT&T. Careful and independent investigation is necessary because the CTA staff has failed to undertake a competitive bidding process, has failed to comply with procurement rules, and has failed to provide the transparency that is so necessary for public contracts. I have provided a letter that describes the contracts and all of the facts that I'm referencing, but briefly, let me describe that Verizon and CTA entered into a contract valued at $7.1 million. That contract is set to expire in the spring of 2016. Likewise, AT&T has a contract with the CTA that will expire in the spring. That one is valued at just over $1 million. The CTA also gave a contract to Sprint in a no-bid deal for $4.8 million 3 years ago. Now the Verizon and the Sprint business are being moved to AT&T without a procurement process. First, the board should demand a formal process before undertaking the change in these contracts. Earlier this year, CTA staffers approached Verizon and told them that they had intentions to upgrade certain services. Verizon sought clarity about what those changes might be, but did not receive clarity about what services were at stake. They did not receive assurances that other wireless vendors were receiving the very same information at the very same time, nor were they given an opportunity to engage in a best and final offer. I've also mentioned that the Sprint contract was a no-bid deal 2 years ago for a disadvantageous contract. Now that contract is being moved without a bid process over to AT&T without the contract being put up for the public to respond to. The board should also demand an independent investigation of the relationship between the landline and the wireless contract. At this time, it's unclear whether AT&T and the CTA have negotiated benefits under the $19.6 million no-bid contract for landline presented today and these changes to the wireless contracts. The Verizon contract with CTA is a piggyback to the state contract that will lapse in the spring of 2016. So in just a few months, this contract will again be open to a public bidding process where everything will be vetted and competition will be fair. And yet the CTA is moving very rapidly to make these changes on the wireless contract. The board should demand that all transactions of this nature come to the board for approval. Moving the Verizon business is inconsistent with the ordinances that originally approved the AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint contracts. Those ordinances are not before you for reconsideration.
Ms. Curson, we need to wrap up pretty shortly.
Also, according to the board's own rules, contracts that exceed $250,000 should be presented to the board, and any change to a contract more than $1 million, if it's more than a 10% change, should also come to the board. And yet these matters are not before you. The board should investigate whether AT&T is being given an unfair competitive advantage that will disadvantage Verizon later after these changes have been made. Your careful attention to the contracts, the process the staff used, the curious timing of the changes to the landline no-bid contract and the wireless changes, and the staff's assertion that it need not secure board approval should be investigated to make sure that the CTA's approach to telecommunications is transparent, fair, compliant with law, and in the best interest of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorval and Karen, can you do me a favor? Make sure you guys look at this letter. and provide the board with a response to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curson. Chairman, that concludes the public comment section of today's board meeting.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is the approval of the July 15th board minutes that were previously distributed. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of July 15,
Move it.
2015.
Move it.
Second.
Mr. Youngblood,
Yes.
this is a motion on the minutes from July.
Yes.
Dr. Sen,
Yes.
Ms. Alba Rosales,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Irvine,
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is executive session. It is my understanding, Karen, that there will be an executive session.
Yes, Chairman, we will have an executive session today pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
Thanks, Karen. With that, I will now entertain a motion to recess into executive session based upon the reasons so stated by council.
So moved.
Move it.
This motion to recess into executive session. Mr. Youngblood,
Yes.
Dr. Sen,
Yes.
Ms. Alba Rosales,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Irvine,
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be seated, and would everybody please silence their cell phones?
I now entertain a motion to return to the board's open meeting. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded to return to open session. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Irvine? Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business are 3 executive session matters. Executive session item number 4A was discussed in executive session. I will now entertain a motion approving an ordinance sustaining the discharge of Deborah Harton.
So moved.
Second.
Take the roll call vote on the motion of the Hardin matter. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine? Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
Motion to approve 4A is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is executive session item number 4B, which was discussed in executive session. I will now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance sustaining the discharge of Joseph Ramirez.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded on the Ramirez item. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine? That's a yes. Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is also approved with 6 yes votes.
The next order of business is agenda item number 5A, an ordinance appointing Andrew Fuller, Acting Chief Internal Auditor of Chicago Transit Authority.
Move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded on the Fuller matter. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine? And Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Silva.
The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee reviewed the finance report and approved the July committee minutes. The committee also reviewed and recommended for board approval the following: an ordinance establishing certain rates of fare for the first day of school in 2015 and 2016, an ordinance authorizing a lease of retail concession space located at 188 North State Street, Chicago, Illinois, an ordinance authorizing a lease of the first and second floor space located at 120 North Racine Avenue, an ordinance authorizing acceptance of a bonus contribution pursuant to the City of Chicago zoning ordinance Brown Line, an ordinance authorizing the sale of authority development rights at 152 West Illinois Street, Chicago, Illinois, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with City Year Incorporated, and 5 purchases and sales award recommendations. The committee recommended approval of all of these items and placing on the omnibus for a board approval. That concludes my report.
Thanks, Director Silva. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Silva?
So moved.
And was seconded?
Second.
Moved and seconded on a vote on the omnibus. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine? Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
The next order of business is a construction report. Chris.
Chris Bouchel, Chief Infrastructure Officer. So today's presentation includes a traction power project at Kimball, Princeton, and State, part of our investment in traction power to support areas of growth in the rail system. 95th Street Terminal Improvement Project, the Wilson Transfer Station, the Ravenswood Loop Connector, and finally a new project, a track project, the North Main Purple Line Express. This is tracks 1 and 4 between Howard and Lawrence. Work continues on the Kimball, Princeton, and State Substation project. Most importantly, we're continuing and completing the exterior renovations as we test the various pieces of new equipment. So I'll remind everybody the complexity of this project because all these substations continue to operate while we do exterior renovations and then while we install new pieces of equipment and in some cases expand their capacity to provide additional traction power. So it's both a case of areas of growth where we had transformer rectifier pairs to have more output and a case where we're replacing obsolete equipment. I've got some photographs here. I think you're probably familiar with the outlines of most of these projects, but at Kimball, we're redoing this exterior section of the building where we're putting in additional transformer rectifiers, or actually replacing existing ones, I'm sorry. Princeton substation on the southern end of the red line, installation of a new transformer. We transform power from 12,500 volts, alternating current to 600 volts DC, and that's the basic power for the rail cars. 95th Terminal. Again, we have a large advanced package out there which is constructing a good portion of the South Terminal foundations. Work continues there. And then we have also rebid the remaining pieces of work here in a design build contract with proposals returning in the middle of this month, so shortly. I know we're in sort of the big pit stage of this project where I show you lots of pictures of big holes in the ground. But this is a jack and bore where we dig a big hole and then we bore a small tunnel underneath the structure at 95th Street so that we can have continuity of power and cabling and so forth. Additionally, we're installing a number of foundation walls. This one obviously at the northwest quadrant, others on the southwest quadrant. Wilson Transfer Station.
Chris,
yeah.
Before you go past that, so a lot of the wiring and everything is underground. So is there a way to get down to service it in case something goes wrong?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So those would ultimately, in the case there'd be splicing chambers if there are splices that need to be maintained. There's other places where the electricians involved could do the basic maintenance on that cabling. So it's not buried forever as a general rule. Wilson Transfer Station, again, we're sort of in the foundation stage of this project, although anyone that's been in that area can start to see some steel coming up. So that project is both on time and on budget. I'm very pleased with the progress out there. You'll see some good pictures, I think, in my report next month of some of the steel and other work that we're doing out there. The contractor, Walsh, has been moving this project along smartly, so I'm pleased with its progress. You can see a list of completed or ongoing activities here relative to it, but in general terms, we're coming out of the ground. We're doing it in a phased way, as we always have to do when we're providing service at the same time we're building something. We're predominantly building on the west, and you can see in some of the subsequent pictures some of the foundation work as well as some of the shoring that we have to do in order to do that. So what's most interesting about this picture is the shoring that's underneath. As we begin to remove pieces of this structure and build new structure, this shoring is critical to the safe operation of the railroad. We take a lot of time in looking at it to making sure that it is safe and well built. This is some of the removal of old structure, which will subsequently be replaced as part of this project. Again, kind of reminding everybody when they look at these price tags that they don't just include sort of a new building. We're not just building a new building, we're building a new structure, and in many cases we're also improving various pieces of the infrastructure that are associated with the project. I mean, this project really is a holistic replacement of infrastructure going all the way from Montrose really up to Leland. So it renews many elements within that area, including the station. The foundations, again, we drill a lot of caissons. You see a lot of pictures like this. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the soils are and how they work, and then subsequently putting foundations down into them. These are the basis for our structure, and we do a lot of caissons throughout the system. Ravenswood Loop Connector, a track project on the Ravenswood Loop Connector section of the Brown Line, which is between Armitage and the Mart. A vital piece of trackage that had a number of slow zones. There are a lot of curves in this section of track, so working through all those curves. It was less about replacing rail and mostly replacing ties. The work is continuing on budget and on schedule. We are now working fairly far south in the downtown area, so anyone that was driving around there last weekend, I give you apologies, but we didn't have a lot of complaints. In fact, it went very well. The contractor did an excellent job, as did our government and community relations folks in talking about all those closures and getting that word out to local businesses so that we minimized impact when we were taking a fairly significant footprint getting closer to the city. I think the pictures are probably pretty telling here. I believe this is at the Sedgwick station. So this was a piece of railroad I'm really glad that we've been able to replace. There was a slow zone just to the south of here. Cleveland crossover. So a new piece of work. The tracks 1 and 2 between Lawrence and Howard, a vital piece of track for us. So we're in the process of replacing that. Again, an area that had a number of slow zones. Those slow zones not only causing our passengers consternation, but also causing increased costs associated with those slow zones. Basically, we have to put more trains out there to cover the same passengers. So by removing those slow zones, we not only provide better comfort and speed to our customers, but also better operating costs to our partners in operations. So this project is really just started. We've had the first few weeks of it. We are probably 5 or 6% into it all told. So in terms of the actual tie replacement. And with that, I conclude my report.
So Chris, I've got one question. Does your department have metrics, or do you have anything that shows the return on the investment, for the customers? I mean, we've got a pretty robust capital plan.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know in terms of, being more reliable, the red line, we were able to shave 20 minutes off the travel time,
Mm-hmm.
downtime. But do you have anything where you kind of track, this investment in terms of just being able to show the return on the investment for this robust capital program?
We'll certainly work closely with the planning department and Tom McCone's group in performance management. I mean, what we tend to look at in our area is really issues relative to our own performance in terms of managing contracts on schedule, on budget, and deviation from either of those two, percent change orders, positive or negative variance to schedule. But the issue of the level of, the return on the investment is an interesting one, and we'll certainly work together with our partners and see what we can come up with. The trick, I think, is isolating the improvements that the capital program is bringing from the overall trends that are happening on the railroad. But it's an excellent question, and we'll bring it forward with our partners in planning and performance management and see what we can do. We have looked at this issue mostly in performance management relative to jobs, exterior, how many jobs our projects are generating, and less. But, as MAP 21 and other federal regulations play out, and we implement asset management programs throughout the company, that also, Chairman, will be an excellent place to begin to see how these investments play out in terms of the quality of our assets and the reduced costs that we put into those and the increased benefits to our customers, internal and external.
Well, the reason I sort of mentioned it,
question.
Dorval, is this. One, we're constantly making the case, both at the federal and the state level, to invest in transit. And I think one of the better arguments as we talk with legislators and members of the Illinois delegation is to start trying to put together metrics to show the return on the investment of what we're doing. If you take a look at the new buses that we're about to purchase, you would have almost turned over our entire fleet. Mm-hmm. That will drive down operations cost in terms of repairing those buses, the money that we have to spend with materials and all of that. Mm-hmm. So just being able to track that so that when you're talking with members, regardless of side of the aisle that they're on, mm-hmm. if they're from, Illinois, Chicago, suburban, just that investment, even in Springfield, talking with legislators about continuing to invest in transit because here's the return on the investment that you'll get by giving us money to continue this, our capital program.
Sounds like you're starting to have conversations with legislators about a new state capital bill, Chairman.
Well,
wow. without going down that path right now. I agree completely with what you're saying, Chairman. I think there are a number of returns on investment that come from improved capital infrastructure. And it's not just necessarily with our customers or the internal cost savings that we have. There's also an economic development piece that comes out of that type of behavior. If you look at Morgan Station, for example, which is capital investment that we've made, we've also seen a overall benefit to the community around that investment that also needs to be captured. And I know that when we talk about finding revenue sources to support capital infrastructure, the concept of value capture, which is similar to what you're talking about in a broader scale of really figuring out how the dollars that come into a community because you've made transit improvements in that community, how some of that can funnel back into transit to support additional infrastructure and other improvements is a major discussion that's occurring not only amongst ourselves, but also particularly at the federal level as they continue to find ways to really identify funding sources to support the massive amount of federal dollars that are necessary to support capital infrastructure needs. So yes, I agree. We'll put together some sort of return of an investment model, and I'll work closely with Tom and Ron and the rest of the team to put something that we can show to the board that kind of gives you a sense of what it means as we implement our capital program, what the return on that investment is.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about talking points to legislators. I mean, if you take a look at your new blue investment and you take a look at what's happening in the West Loop as development continues to go west, going past, it's past Ashland now, it's headed toward Western. You look at what's happening in the Illinois Medical District. You look at just the announcement that the mayor just made regarding the Malcolm X site with the Blackhawks and all of that. And a lot of that, when you look, at the Blue Line, and even if you look at where Google is going along Lake Street, and you mentioned the Morgan Street Station, just people investing where we're investing. And again, I think that's what I was getting at, is that if you look at where we have, over the past 4 years, under the mayor's leadership, started to invest, you look at what's happening in those communities, and I think there's a correlation between the capital program that we've had and where you're seeing an interest from the private sector wanting to invest in those areas as well.
Well, President Carter's being pretty modest here, too. Some of the procurements that he's brought forward recently, particularly the development rights deal that Joe Harmoning brought forward today, that kind of value capture is the tip of the iceberg, and capturing it and understanding where it is really one of the most unique things that the mayor has brought in his past and current administration, and I think that President Carter is interested in bringing it forward. I mean, that's $4 million. People wanting to invest and then the authority getting money back from those investments is really key to growing ridership and making sure our system maintains a state of good repair. So, I certainly applaud some of the early moves that President Carter has made and that this board has supported.
Great.
That's money in the bank for both operations as well as capital work.
Agreed. Any additional questions for Chris? All right, thanks, Chris. Greg, is there any new business to come before the board?
No, sir.
Since there is no new business to come before the board, I now entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn. Thank you.